Mercedes principal Toto Wolff has just revealed that he is optimistic that his team can continue this positive trajectory following their Canadian GP victory, with new staff and new parts on the way. This could help them big time in their pursuit for victory. But will it be enough? Red Bull started F1 2024 as the dominant team, but competitors are threatening to complicate their title pursuit, with Mercedes sending a warning shot with their performance at the Canadian GP. And they could be challenging even more in Barcelona this weekend. Following the introduction of a new front wing in Monaco, Mercedes impressed at the Canadian Grand Prix, with George Russell competing for victory at the Circuit Gilles Villeneuve before finishing third, with Red Bull's Max Verstappen taking the win. Speaking to the media after the race, Wolff was asked if this marks a turning point for Mercedes, which has been looking for answers to launching a new title push since the F1 ground effect era began in 2022. Wolff would talk positively about Mercedes' trajectory since Imola, with performance increased to the W15 at each race weekend and further enhancements planned for the Spanish Grand Prix, as well as some fresh recruits on the way. Wolff expects this would help sustain the momentum. "I think definitely since Imola, we have taken the right steps and put parts on the car that were working," stated Wolff. "That is something that we were struggling with in the past couple of years, and now directionally, we seem to be adding performance every weekend. And with new staff coming, also new parts coming in Barcelona, that should help us. So I would very much hope that we can continue this positive trajectory." Wolff agreed to being wary about getting carried away, but the stopwatch will eventually decide whether Mercedes has actually discovered the right route. "I'm always a bit worried, when you get carried away," he said, "that everything seems to be now falling into place. Because this is a difficult sport, and we've had this positive trajectory now since the last 3 races, and everything seems to be making much more sense. So the stopwatch will tell us." But even though Mercedes is riding this wave of optimism coming into the Spanish Grand Prix, the team knows better than to get carried away with a single excellent weekend. The Silver Arrows are attempting to supplement their on-track success with the proper brains and ideas off of it. Toto Wolff acknowledged that preparations are being done to implement this dual strategy. Mercedes took a dramatic choice less than 18 months ago. They replaced Mike Elliott with James Allison, who had stepped down from the team's F1 operations in 2022. The British engineer was assigned with reviving Mercedes' failed development. In general, the Silver Arrows recognise that returning to the front lines will be challenging. Last season was mostly thought of as a transitional year for the squad. However, there are some signs of improvement. The technical team at Brackley believes they have discovered the missing piece of the puzzle. Mercedes is not just more competitive, but there is also a sense of assurance and trust in their improvements. The races before the summer break will be vital for Mercedes. In about 2 months, the team will know if their pace in Canada was the start of a larger trend. Regardless of their destiny in 2024, Mercedes understands the value of growing their technical staff. During the height of their power, they experienced a brain drain as rivals hired many of their top executives. But with new personnel coming in at Brackley, there is now hope for the rest of 2024, as well as modest trust in the engine designers at Brixworth for 2026. Could we see Mercedes returning to the top step of the podium in any of the upcoming races? They certainly seem to think so, and it isn't just Wolff talking up the workers, as their drivers also seem to be impressed by recent improvements. George Russell is sure Mercedes has reached a corner, with recent speed gains fitting the team's expectations. George Russell stated that Mercedes' recent comeback to form hasn't been a surprise to the team, as its performance on track coincided with the figures it was seeing back at base. Despite having his and the Brackley-based outfit's best weekend of the season so far in Montreal, the 26-year-old believes the forthcoming Spanish Grand Prix will be critical for all of the major teams in establishing the actual pecking order as the campaign approaches its halfway point. Since the reintroduction of ground effects to F1 at the start of 2022, Mercedes has failed to return to the stratospheric heights it had at the commencement of the turbo-hybrid engine era in 2014. With only one Grand Prix victory in the previous 2.5 seasons, the team's current progress appears overdue, with many questioning whether it is again another false dawn. However, Russell does not believe that is the case this time. This pace increase that we've seen from us this weekend, it hasn't been a surprise to us because all the numbers back at the factory told us we're going to be finding a big chunk of performance with these upgrades, he said when asked if Mercedes are back, before adding, "Barcelona is going to be interesting for everybody, but I'm confident we can be in the fight." Russell won pole position in the Canadian Grand Prix, but was unable to convert it into victory, settling for Mercedes' first Grand Prix podium of the season. Russell lined up first, despite setting an identical lap time as Max Verstappen, who looked his typical self in the Red Bull, following a tough weekend in Monaco. The Milton Keynes team was not anticipated to return to total dominance at the Circuit Gilles Villeneuve, and qualifying confirmed this. However, Russell believes that the round in Spain will offer a more accurate picture of where the champions stand right now, with McLaren, Ferrari and Mercedes all closing in. "I think Red Bull have had. It's no secret they've struggled a little bit with their car these last 3 races," the British driver remarked. "So I think we need to see how their performance turns out in Barcelona, which is a little bit more of a conventional circuit. Mercedes seem to be aware that they're kind of good right now, but it seems that other teams are even getting scared of them, especially now that they've got a lot of upgrades coming up and new personnel coming in." This was revealed as Andrea Stella stated he believes Mercedes has overcome its inherent limits. The McLaren team principal is concerned about the threat presented by the Silver Arrows. According to the Italian, the Brackley-based team's recent spike in speed has been coming for a while. And while there is a lot of disagreement in F1 circles regarding how sustainable Canada's W15 success is, Stella believes the present rise at Mercedes is sustainable. Even before last weekend, Mercedes had reasons to be optimistic about the future. Although projecting the pecking order for 2026 is nearly impossible, the general consensus in the paddock is that Mercedes will have a powerful power unit in 2026. Regardless of their first performances in 2024, Toto Wolff's staff are expected to return to the front with new engine rules. Fortunately for Toto Wolff and his team, the next 18 months are not a write-off. Following weeks of increasingly bullish declarations from Toto Wolff and George Russell, the Canadian Grand Prix saw the W15 perform at its peak. The period of experimenting is over, and James Allison's technical staff is convinced they know which course to go. The return of the Silver Arrows is noted elsewhere on the grid. Andrea Stella of McLaren is among those who have discussed the Mercedes danger. "I said to some colleagues on Thursday that I think Mercedes is one of the fastest teams," he said. "Some of the lap times they drove in Monaco or at the previous events were out of reach for us. We couldn't do those lap times at that point in the weekend, even with low fuel and a revved engine. They clearly had potential, and I think they're starting to learn how to exploit it." For a long period, McLaren's growth exaggerated Mercedes' failings. A customer team seldom outperforms a manufacturer. Fortunately for the German constructor, there is light at the end of the tunnel. The squad will have the potential to solidify its position at the lead in the next rounds. Not only will their anticipated improvements boost their 2024 performance, but they may also prepare George Russell and his next colleague for a strong 2025 campaign. But it's not all smooth sailing, as such a sudden rise in performance will obviously get scrutinized, and for Mercedes, this is no different. This has come to light as Red Bull's Milton Keynes engineers, led by Paul Monahan, are closely monitoring the new Mercedes front wing. This specification originally appeared on Russell's car at Monaco. It was then applied to both automobiles in Canada, with terrible results. An unofficial request has been sent to the FIA technical office to monitor the bending of the W15's front wing and nose. Throughout the FIA's static inspections, the Mercedes front wing has always remained within legal limits. However, teams can also trigger flexing at certain load ranges during the lap. According to numerous insiders, television images show that the front wing of the revised specification W15 flexes more than the original standard. With the fight at the front intensifying, teams are paying extra attention to the work of rivals. This scrutiny is to either copy or ask for clarification on potentially suspicious elements. What do you think? Could it be that Mercedes is employing an illegal front wing, and will they be challenging for the win this weekend? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below.